The morning sun gleamed off the golden ornaments of Buckingham Palace as crowds began to gather along the fences. It was just past 9, and already tourists from every corner of the world formed thick lines, cameras ready, and children hoisted onto shoulders. This was a daily scene at the palace, where people came to witness the pageantry of British tradition, particularly the famous royal guards with their red coats and tall bearskin hats. Sergeant James Holloway adjusted his uniform one last time in the guardroom mirror. At 32, he had spent nearly a decade with the Queen's Guard, earning respect for his unwavering discipline. His reflection showed a man whose face revealed nothing, not the mild headache from last night's too-hot barracks, not the letter from his brother back in Liverpool, and certainly not the growing pain in his left knee that flared up in cold weather. "Proper as always, sir," said Private Thomas Bennett, nodding at Holloway's immaculate appearance. Bennett was 24 with just 3 years of service. Unlike many of the younger guards who saw this duty as a stepping stone, Bennett had dreamed of this position since childhood. His grandfather had served in the Guard decades ago, and the stories he'd told had shaped Bennett's future. "Remember, 2 hours. Eyes forward. Parade rest when standing," Holloway reminded him, though Bennett hardly needed the reminder. "American tour groups are scheduled this morning. They always try the hardest to make us crack." Bennett nodded, suppressing a smile. "My record stands unbroken, sir." The pair joined 4 other guards for inspection before their shift. Captain Richard Fullerton walked slowly past each man, checking for any imperfection. A button not properly polished, a strap incorrectly positioned. Any small flaw would be grounds for replacement. "Holloway, Bennett, East Post today," the captain announced. The East Post was directly in front of the main gates, the most photographed and challenging position. It was a compliment to be stationed there. The changing of the guard was itself a spectacle that drew hundreds of onlookers. The precise movements, the synchronized marching, it was theater as much as military procedure. Holloway and Bennett took their positions with practiced precision, relieving 2 guards who had maintained their own perfect stillness for the previous shift. As the relieved guards marched away, Holloway and Bennett assumed the position that would be theirs for the next 2 hours. Feet shoulder-width apart, rifles positioned exactly, eyes staring straight ahead at a fixed point in the distance, and then the real test began. "Do you think they're robots?" a small boy asked his father loudly, pointing directly at Holloway. "They're real people, Charlie. They're just very well trained," the father explained. "They're not allowed to move or talk while they're on duty." This, of course, was the challenge that made tourists flock to the guards. The possibility of making one flinch, blink, or somehow acknowledge the outside world had become a game for visitors. Some tried jokes, others made faces, and the more persistent ones tried startling movements. A teenage girl posed for a selfie, leaning dangerously close to Bennett. "He's not even breathing!" She squealed to her friends, though of course he was, just with such control that his chest barely moved. An hour passed. The September air held the first hint of autumn chill. Holloway felt the familiar pressure building in his lower back. Standing completely still was far more taxing than moving around. His training let him shift his weight imperceptibly, relieving pressure without visible movement. Beside him, Bennett remained equally motionless. "I heard they can stand like that for 6 hours without a break," someone in the crowd whispered loudly. "That's impossible," another voice countered. In truth, shifts were 2 hours, with carefully planned rotations. The human body, even one as disciplined as Holloway's, had limits. A group of schoolchildren on a field trip gathered in front of them, their teacher attempting to explain the history of the Guard. "These soldiers are part of a tradition that goes back to 1660, the teacher began, her voice carrying clearly. "They're not just for show. They're actual soldiers with combat training." Holloway remained still, but the teacher was correct. Both he and Bennett had served in active combat zones before being selected for the Queen's Guard. For Holloway, it had been 2 tours in Afghanistan. For Bennett, service in Iraq. The ceremonial duty at the palace came after proving oneself in far less glamorous circumstances. "Why don't they get bored?" a girl in a blue school uniform asked. The truth was, boredom was the enemy they fought most often on these shifts. Holloway had developed mental exercises over the years. Sometimes he would recite poetry in his head. Tennyson was a favorite. Other times he would mentally replay rugby matches from memory, or plan weekend activities in perfect detail. Today, his thoughts drifted to his younger sister's upcoming wedding. He needed to finalize his speech. He mentally drafted and revised lines while his body remained perfectly still, his eyes fixed ahead, giving no hint of the activity in his mind. A man in an expensive suit approached, studying both guards with interest. "I was in the military myself," he announced loudly to his companion. 20 years. But this kind of discipline, it's something else entirely. Bennett, though his expression never changed, felt a flicker of pride. That recognition from veterans meant more than any amount of tourist attention. His grandfather had told him once, "The uniform isn't for show. It's a promise kept to history." The crowd shifted constantly, faces appearing and disappearing. Some stayed for minutes, others for just a quick photo before moving on. From Holloway's position, he could see the changing patterns of clouds above the palace roof, one of the few parts of the environment that offered any variation during his watch. Professional photographer with multiple cameras spent nearly 20 minutes trying different angles and lenses. The contrast between their stillness and the moving crowd creates fascinating imagery, he explained to someone. It's like they exist in a different time stream than everyone else. Halfway through their shift, light rain began to fall. Tourists opened umbrellas or sought shelter, but Holloway and Bennett remained perfectly positioned, the raindrops gathering on their hats and shoulders. "Aren't they going to move?" a woman asked, sounding genuinely concerned. "Not unless the palace is under attack," her companion replied. The rainfall intensified briefly before passing. Water ran down Holloway's face, but he didn't blink or wipe it away. Years of training had taught him to endure far worse discomforts. Bennett, still relatively new to the guard, had practiced in shower stalls to master the art of keeping his eyes open despite water running over them. A family from Japan approached, bowing respectfully before taking photos. Unlike many tourists, they maintained a respectful distance. The father translated for his children, explaining the guard's role with accuracy and reverence. "The guard positions are earned through years of service," the man told his children in Japanese, which Holloway understood enough to follow. These men represent centuries of tradition. As the 2-hour mark approached, both guards could sense it without checking watches. The body developed an internal clock after enough repetition. Captain Fullerton appeared at the scheduled time, leading the next pair of guards for the changing ceremony. The precise, almost mechanical movements of the guard change again drew a crowd. Holloway and Bennett executed each motion with perfect timing, the inspection of the incoming guards, the formal handover, and finally the synchronized march that would take them away from their post. Only when they were inside, out of public view, did they finally relax their posture. "Good shift," Bennett said, rolling his shoulders. "Decent weather. Mostly respectful crowd," Holloway agreed, removing his bearskin hat and feeling the relief of cool air on his head. "Though I could have done without the rain." They changed out of their ceremonial uniforms in comfortable silence. The weight of the formal uniform, over 8 pounds for the bearskin hat alone, made regular clothes feel strangely light in comparison. Some American asked, "Me if we get bathroom breaks," and another guard mentioned as he entered the changing room. "Told his kid we have special training to not need them." This brought chuckles from everyone. The myths tourists created about the guards were an endless source of amusement among the regiment. "Tomorrow we're on West Post," Holloway told Bennett as they prepared to leave. "Less crowded, but more sun in your eyes this time of year." Bennett nodded. "My grandmother's visiting next week. Wants to see me on duty. First time since I joined the guard. We'll make sure she gets a good view," Holloway promised. Family pride was something everyone in the regiment understood. As they left the palace grounds in civilian clothes, tourists walked past them without a second glance. The same people who had spent minutes staring at them earlier, now completely unaware of who they were. This anonymity was something both men appreciated after hours of being the center of attention. Tomorrow would bring another shift, another crowd, and the same unwavering discipline. For now, they were just 2 ordinary men heading home after work, carrying the invisible weight of tradition with quiet pride. The morning sky over London hung heavy with clouds as 8-year-old Lily Matthews stared out the train window. The countryside had given way to suburbs, and now tall buildings crowded against each other as they approached the city center. Lily pressed her small hand against the cool glass, her reflection showing back a pale face beneath a blue knitted cap that covered her hairless head. Almost there, Sweetheart, her mother Catherine said, squeezing her daughter's other hand. Are you excited? Lily nodded, though her usual spark of energy was dimmed. The train journey from Manchester had tired her more than it should have. The doctors had warned Catherine about this, how even small activities could drain her daughter's strength. But this trip was too important to cancel. Will we see the Queen? Lily asked, her voice soft but hopeful. Catherine smiled. Probably not, love. But we'll see her house and the famous guards in their red coats and tall furry hats. The ones who never smile? Lily's eyes widened slightly. Those are the ones. No matter what happens around them, they stay perfectly still and serious. Lily considered this with the particular thoughtfulness that had become more pronounced during her illness. I bet I could make them smile, she said finally. Catherine felt her heart clench. Before the diagnosis, Lily had been a whirlwind of energy and laughter, always the first to make friends on playgrounds or charm adults with her quick wit. The leukemia had taken much of her energy, but none of her spirit. The train pulled into the station and Catherine gathered their small overnight bag. They would only be in London for 2 days, a special trip arranged through the Children's Wish Foundation. When the hospital's social worker had asked Lily what she wanted most, the girl had surprisingly not mentioned Disney parks or movie stars like many children did. Instead, she'd asked to see the changing of the guard at Buckingham Palace, something her father had told her about in his many stories. Daddy says they're the bravest soldiers in the whole world, Lily had explained. Just like him. Robert Matthews had served in the army for 12 years, including 2 tours in Afghanistan before an injury had sent him home. He'd wanted to come on this trip, but someone needed to stay with Lily's younger brother. The separation was hard on all of them, but they'd agreed this mother-daughter trip was important. They took a black cab from the station, the driver becoming unusually chatty when he learned why they were visiting. First time in London, is it? He asked, meeting Lily's eyes in the rearview mirror. Lily nodded. Well then, we'll take the scenic route, no extra charge, he decided, steering them past Trafalgar Square, where pigeons gathered around tourists with breadcrumbs. Lily pressed her face to the window. Look at all the birds, Mum. Catherine smiled, grateful for the driver's kindness. These small moments of joy had become precious. Their hotel was small but comfortable, located within walking distance of the palace. After checking in and resting for an hour, Lily's color had gone worryingly pale during the cab ride. They set out toward Buckingham Palace. The September air had a crisp edge to it. Catherine had wrapped Lily in an extra layer and made sure her cap covered her ears. The girl walked slowly, holding her mother's hand. Occasionally they stopped on benches along the way, pretending to admire the scenery while Lily caught her breath. There are so many people here, Lily observed as they approached the palace. Crowds had already gathered along the fence, tourists with cameras and phones ready. How will the guards see me if I'm all the way in the back? Catherine had thought about this problem. She'd spoken to someone at the foundation who had contacted the palace explaining Lily's situation. They hadn't promised anything but suggested arriving at a certain gate where a staff member might meet them. We're going to a special entrance, Catherine explained, guiding Lily away from the main crowd. Someone knows we're coming. At a smaller side gate, a woman in a dark suit waited, checking her watch. When she saw Lily in her blue cap, a look of recognition crossed her face. You must be Miss Matthews, she said, kneeling down to Lily's level. My name is Helen. I work at the palace. And I heard you were coming to see the guards today. Lily nodded, suddenly shy. Well, we have a special viewing spot for special visitors like you. Helen smiled, producing a pass that she handed to Catherine. This will let you through to the inner courtyard. You'll have a much better view of the ceremony from there. Catherine felt tears threatening. Thank you, she managed, her voice thick with gratitude. They followed Helen through the gate and into an area where only a handful of other visitors stood, mostly official-looking people in business attire. From here, they had a clear view of 2 guards standing at their posts, still as statues in their red uniforms and tall bearskin hats. The changing ceremony will begin in about 20 minutes, Helen explained. In the meantime, you're welcome to look at the guards already on duty. Lily stared at the nearest guard with fascination. He's not moving at all, she whispered. Not even a tiny bit. That's Sergeant Holloway, Helen told her. He's one of our most experienced guards, and the one next to him is Private Bennett. How long do they have to stand like that? Lily asked. 2 hours at a time, Helen said. It takes years of training to be able to stand so still for so long. Lily considered this. My legs would get very tired, she decided. Mine too, Catherine agreed. After Helen left to attend to other duties, Lily watched the guards with growing interest. Other visitors in their special area took photos and spoke in hushed tones, but maintained a respectful distance from the guards. Mum, Lily said after several minutes of observation, can I go a little closer? I want to see if his eyes move. Catherine hesitated. We should stay behind the rope, love. But Lily looked so eager, her eyes bright with the first real excitement Catherine had seen in weeks. Please, just for a minute? Against her better judgment, Catherine nodded. Just for a minute, and don't cross the rope. Stay on this side. Lily approached the barrier, now only about 15 feet from Sergeant Holloway. She studied him with intense curiosity, tilting her head as if trying to solve a puzzle. The guard remained perfectly still, eyes fixed forward. If he was aware of the small girl's scrutiny, he gave no sign of it. After a moment, Lily turned back to her mother. I'm going to draw his picture when we get home, she announced. I'll give it to Daddy. He'll like that. A lump formed in Catherine's throat. Robert had always been so proud of his military service, and had hoped that one day he might see Lily grow up to achieve her own dreams. The doctors had given them little hope of that future now. As they waited for the changing ceremony, Lily's energy began to flag. The excitement had taken its toll, and she leaned heavily against Catherine's side. Are you tired, sweetheart? We can sit down. Lily shook her head stubbornly. I want to see them march. Daddy said their marching is perfect, like they're all connected by invisible strings. Catherine nodded, supporting more of her daughter's weight. All right, but tell me if you need to rest. The first sounds of the approaching guard relief came from distant drums and then the steady rhythm of marching feet. Lily straightened slightly, her fatigue momentarily forgotten as a formation of red-coated soldiers came into view, moving in perfect unison. Look, Mom, just like Daddy said. The ceremony was impressive even to Catherine, who had seen military precision before. The inspection of the new guards, the formal handover, the synchronized movements, it was like watching a dance performed with absolute precision. Lily watched with wide eyes, not speaking. When the relief guard approached Sergeant Holloway's position, she held her breath as if afraid that even that small sound might interrupt the ceremony. The changing of the guard took about 10 minutes, and by the end, Lily was visibly wilting despite her best efforts to stay strong. As the relieved guards began to march away, Catherine knew it was time to find somewhere for her daughter to rest. They were amazing, Lily said, her voice tired but satisfied. Can we come back tomorrow to see it again? We'll see how you're feeling, Catherine answered carefully. Their schedule was deliberately flexible, allowing for Lily's good and bad days. As they turned to leave, Lily suddenly stopped. Wait, she said. I need to tell him something. Before Catherine could stop her, Lily had ducked under the barrier rope and taken 3 steps toward Sergeant Holloway, who was now walking with his relief unit. Lily. Catherine called, alarmed. The sergeant was already several yards away, marching in formation. He couldn't turn around or acknowledge Lily without breaking protocol. Yet something made him pause for just half a second, a barely perceptible hesitation in his step that no one but another soldier might have noticed. A palace staff member was already moving toward Lily, but with gentle hands rather than alarm. Catherine rushed to her daughter's side. I just wanted to tell him thank you, Lily explained, looking up at her mother, for being brave like Daddy. The staff member, an older man with kind eyes, knelt beside Lily. You know, he said conversationally. The guards finished their duty route just around that corner. If you'd like to leave a message, I could make sure they receive it. Lily's face brightened. Really? Really, he promised. What would you like me to tell them? Lily thought for a moment, then said clearly, Please tell them that Lily Matthews thinks they're just as brave as her daddy, Captain Robert Matthews, who was in Afghanistan, and that I'm trying to be brave too. The staff member's expression changed subtly at the mention of Robert's name and rank, a flash of recognition quickly controlled. I'll make sure they get your message, Miss Matthews. Captain Robert Matthews, you said? Lily nodded solemnly. It would be my honor, the man said, standing. He turned to Catherine. If you'd like to wait in the visitors' pavilion, there's tea and a place to rest. No rush. As they followed him toward a small building at the edge of the grounds, Catherine wondered at his reaction to Robert's name. Had they served together? London sometimes felt like a huge place, but the military community could be surprisingly small. In the pavilion, Lily sank gratefully into a comfortable chair, while Catherine got them both tea. The girl's eyes were heavy, the excitement of the day catching up with her. "Did you like seeing the guards?" Catherine asked, brushing a strand of hair from her daughter's forehead. "It was even better than Daddy described," Lily murmured, already half asleep. "I think tomorrow I might even make one of them smile." Catherine doubted that, knowing the guards' famous discipline, but she smiled at her daughter's confidence. "Maybe you will, sweetheart. Maybe you will." Sergeant James Holloway removed his bearskin hat and placed it carefully on the shelf in the guards' changing room. His movements were precise, a habit formed through years of military discipline. But his mind wasn't on his uniform today. Something about that small girl with the blue cap had struck him. And not just because she'd broken protocol by approaching the marching formation. "Matthews," he said quietly to himself. Captain Robert Matthews. Private Bennett, changing nearby, glanced over. "Did you say something, sir?" Holloway hesitated. "That girl today, the one with the blue cap. She mentioned her father, Captain Robert Matthews." Bennett shrugged. "Name doesn't ring a bell. Should it?" "It does to me." Holloway sat on the bench, his usually perfect posture relaxing slightly. "We served together in Afghanistan. Helmand Province, 2015. The changing room was emptying as the other guards finished their shift and headed out. Soon only Holloway and Bennett remained. Bennett sensed there was more to this story and waited patiently for his superior to continue. "Robert Matthews saved my life," Holloway finally said, his voice low. "Our patrol was ambushed. 3 men down in the first minute. I took a hit to the leg, couldn't move. Matthews carried me half a mile under fire to reach cover." Bennett let out a low whistle. "That's something. He was hit twice doing it. Second shot got him in the spine." Holloway's face tightened. "Ended his career. He spent 6 months in hospital. I visited when I could, met his family. His daughter would have been about 4 then. The girl today, Lily, wasn't it? She's his daughter." Holloway nodded. "Has to be. Same name, right age. But she looks—" He trailed off, troubled. "She didn't look well." A knock at the door interrupted them. Both men straightened instinctively. The door opened to reveal Mr. Phillips, one of the senior palace staff members who'd been working there longer than most of the guards had been alive. "Sergeant Holloway," Phillips said with a nod. "Thought I might catch you before you left. A moment of your time?" Bennett took the hint. "I'll head out, sir. See you tomorrow." When they were alone, Phillips closed the door and handed Holloway a folded piece of palace stationery. "The young Miss Matthews asked me to pass on a message. Said her father was Captain Robert Matthews, Afghanistan." Holloway took the paper. "I know him. We served together." Phillips nodded, unsurprised. "I thought there might be a connection when I saw your reaction during the march. Very slight. Most wouldn't notice, but I've been watching guards come and go for 30 years. Holloway unfolded the note and read, the simple message written in an adult's handwriting but signed with a child's uneven letters. "Thank you for being brave like my daddy. I'm trying to be brave too." "Lily Matthews, do you know why they're here?" Holloway asked, carefully refolding the paper. Philip's expression softened. "Children's Wish Foundation? The mother didn't say much, but I've seen enough of these visits over the years. The child is ill, seriously ill, I'd say." Holloway felt something twist in his chest. "Cancer. Leukemia, I believe. I overheard the mother speaking with one of our staff about medication schedules. They're staying until tomorrow afternoon." Holloway nodded, absorbing this information with the same control he applied to everything. "Thank you for telling me." Phillips turned to leave, then paused. "They'll be watching the morning guard change again tomorrow. The mother mentioned it was important to the girl." He gave Holloway a significant look before departing. Left alone, Holloway sat for a long time, the note in his hand. Robert Matthews had never asked for anything in return for saving his life. When Holloway had visited him in the hospital, trying awkwardly to express his gratitude, Robert had waved it away. "We look after our own," he'd said simply. "You'd have done the same." Holloway had kept in touch for the first year after Robert's injury, but gradually their contact had faded as their lives moved in different directions. The last he'd heard, Robert was working with a veterans organization in Manchester. That had been at least 3 years ago. His phone was in his hand before he'd fully made the decision to call. It took some searching through old contacts, but eventually he found the number he was looking for. He hesitated only briefly before dialing. The phone rang 4 times before a familiar voice answered. "Hello? Robert? It's James Holloway." A pause then. "James? God, it's been ages. How are you?" "I'm well," Holloway replied, falling into the easy rhythm they'd once shared. "Still with the Queen's Guard? Still standing perfectly still while tourists try to make you laugh?" There was a smile in Robert's voice. "Something like that." Holloway took a breath. "Robert, I saw Lily today. At the palace." The silence that followed was heavy. When Robert spoke again, his voice had changed. "You recognized her?" "She mentioned your name. Left a note saying I was brave like her daddy." Holloway paused. "Robert, is she all right?" Another long silence. "No," Robert finally said, his voice tight. "She's not all right, James. Acute lymphoblastic leukemia. Diagnosed 14 months ago. We thought the treatment was working, but it came back more aggressive. This trip to London. It might be her last big adventure." Holloway closed his eyes, feeling the weight of those words. "I'm sorry. Yeah, me too." Robert cleared his throat. "She was so excited about seeing the guards. Keeps all the pictures of me in uniform. Asks for stories about my time in service. Wanted to see the real thing. She'll be back tomorrow, for the morning ceremony. Catherine mentioned they'd try. Depends on how Lily's feeling. Some days are better than others." Holloway made a decision then, quick and certain as the ones he'd made in combat. "I'm on duty tomorrow morning." "East Post." Robert seemed to understand what wasn't being said. "James, you don't have to—" "I want to," Holloway interrupted. "If she comes, I'll be there." After the call ended, Holloway sat for several minutes thinking. What he was considering would break 200 years of tradition. Guards simply did not break character while on duty. It was one of their most sacred rules. Yet he kept seeing Robert Matthews running through gunfire to reach him, refusing to leave him behind despite his own injuries. Some debts couldn't be repaid, but some gestures needed to be made regardless of the cost. His decision made, Holloway stood and finished changing into his civilian clothes. He had preparations to make before tomorrow's duty. Morning came with a light drizzle that threatened to keep tourists away from the changing ceremony. Holloway arrived early, his mind focused. He'd slept little, turning over his plan again and again, weighing consequences against conviction. In the guard room, Bennett was already preparing his uniform. "Morning, sir," he said with a nod. "Bennett," Holloway acknowledged, beginning his own preparations. After a moment of hesitation, he added, "I may do something unusual during duty today. If I do, you're not obligated to follow my lead." Bennett looked at him curiously. "Sir, it's about the Matthews girl. Her father saved my life in Afghanistan. She's dying, Bennett." Understanding dawned in Bennett's eyes. "The Children's Wish Foundation visit. I heard about it from Phillips." "Yes. If she comes today, I plan to acknowledge her." Holloway met the younger guard's eyes directly. It will break protocol. Bennett was quiet for a moment, absorbing this. Finally, he nodded. "Then I'll follow your lead, sir. Whatever you decide. You could face disciplinary action." A small smile touched Bennett's lips. "Some things are more important than regulations, sir." Captain Fullerton entered then, ending their conversation. The pre-duty inspection proceeded as normal, with no indication that Holloway was planning anything out of the ordinary. The captain reviewed their uniforms with his usual attention to detail, finding nothing amiss. "Weather's keeping the crowds thin this morning," Fullerton noted as they prepared to march out. "Might be a quieter shift than usual." Holloway nodded, wondering if Lily and her mother would brave the rain. Part of him hoped they wouldn't come. It would make his decision simpler. But another part, the part that still carried the weight of Robert Matthews' sacrifice, hoped they would. The changing ceremony proceeded with its customary precision. Holloway and Bennett took their positions at the East Post, assuming the familiar stance that would be maintained for the next 2 hours. The rain had lightened to a misty drizzle, and a few determined tourists were already gathering along the fence, umbrellas raised. Holloway stared straight ahead, his expression revealing nothing. But his peripheral vision swept the area regularly, looking for a small figure in a blue cap, An hour passed with no sign of Lily. The crowd grew as the rain stopped completely, sunlight occasionally breaking through the clouds. Holloway maintained his statue-like stillness, but his hope of seeing the girl was fading. Then, just as the sun fully emerged, casting a golden light across the palace grounds, he saw them. Catherine Matthews was guiding her daughter carefully through the gathering crowd. Lily looked even paler than yesterday, moving slowly, but her face lit up at the sight of the guards. Holloway's training kept him motionless, but his mind raced. They were approaching his position, Catherine bending down to say something in her daughter's ear. A palace staff member, not Phillips this time but a younger woman, was accompanying them, ensuring they had a clear view. They stopped about 15 feet from where Holloway stood. Lily was staring directly at him now, a mixture of awe and curiosity on her small face. She leaned heavily against her mother, clearly tired from even this short walk. "Is that the same one from yesterday?" Holloway heard her ask. Catherine nodded. "Yes, love. That's Sergeant Holloway." Lily straightened slightly, gathering her strength. "Daddy says he's a hero," she said, her voice carrying clearly in the morning air. Several tourists turned to look at the small girl with the blue cap. There was something about her fragile appearance and bright eyes that drew attention. "Your daddy is the real hero," Catherine replied softly. Lily took a step forward, then another. Catherine started to reach for her, then seemed to decide to let her daughter continue. The staff member looked uncertain but didn't interfere. Holloway remained perfectly still, eyes forward as Lily approached. Protocol dictated that he ignore her completely, just as he ignored all tourists who came close to his position. The girl stopped directly in front of him, looking up at his towering figure. At 8 years old, the top of her head barely reached his mid-chest. "My daddy says you saved each other," Lily said clearly, addressing him directly. "He says that's what soldiers do. I wanted to see the bravest soldiers, just like my daddy." The tourists around them had gone quiet, sensing something unusual in this interaction between the small, sick girl and the impassive guard. Lily swayed slightly, her strength clearly fading, but her eyes remained fixed on Holloway's face. "I'm being brave too," she said, her voice dropping to just above a whisper, "even when it's hard." In that moment, Sergeant James Holloway, with 8 years of perfect discipline in the Queen's Guard, made his decision. Time seemed to stop as Sergeant Holloway looked down at Lily Matthews. For 8 years he had maintained perfect discipline, never breaking character no matter what happened around him. Tourists had shouted, made faces, even touched him, and through it all,
he had remained as still and expressionless as the palace itself. But none of those
tourists had been the dying daughter of the man who had saved his life. With a deliberate motion that sent a ripple of surprise through the watching crowd, Holloway broke his stance. He took a step forward and then, to the astonishment of everyone watching, he knelt down on one knee to bring himself level with Lily's face. A collective gasp rose from the tourists. Phones were raised higher, cameras clicked rapidly. Someone whispered loudly, "They're not supposed to do that." Lily's eyes widened as the stern-faced guard suddenly became a person looking directly at her. For a moment she seemed too surprised to speak. Behind her, Catherine's hand flew to her mouth, shocked by this unexpected break in protocol. "Hello, Lily Matthews," Holloway said, his voice gentle but clear. "I'm James Holloway. I served with your father in Afghanistan." Lily's tired face brightened. "You know my daddy?" "I do. He's one of the finest soldiers I've ever known." Holloway's voice remained steady, though his heart was racing with the knowledge of what he was doing. "And he was right when he told you that we look after each other." From his post nearby, Private Bennett watched this unfolding scene with a mixture of astonishment and admiration. Without conscious thought, he made his own decision. Breaking his stance just as Holloway had done, Bennett stepped forward and knelt beside his superior. The crowd's murmurs grew louder. Phones were recording furiously now, capturing this unprecedented moment when not one but 2 royal guards broke their famous discipline. A palace staff member started forward, clearly uncertain how to handle this situation, but the young woman who had escorted Lily and her mother placed a restraining hand on his arm. "Wait," she murmured. "Just wait." Holloway reached slowly into his uniform jacket and withdrew something small and shining. It was a medal, a regimental honor he had received for his service, one that soldiers rarely parted with. "Your father once carried me to safety when I was wounded," he told Lily. His voice pitched for her ears but audible to those nearby. "I've carried this medal since then as a reminder of bravery. I'd be honored if you would carry it now." He held out the medal, a simple silver disc on a red and blue ribbon. Lily looked at it with wonder, then back at Holloway's face. "Really? For me?" "For you," he confirmed. "Because your father was right about another thing. You're being very brave." Lily reached out and took the medal carefully, as if it might break. "Thank you," she whispered. Catherine stepped forward then, tears streaming down her face. "Sergeant Holloway, I don't know what to say." "No thanks needed, ma'am," Holloway replied, rising back to his full height. "It's an honor to meet Robert's family." A palace official was hurrying across the grounds now, alerted by radio to the breach of protocol. His face showed a mixture of concern and confusion as he approached the scene. Bennett, still kneeling, spoke directly to Lily. "Your father is a hero to many of us," he said simply. "And so are you." The official reached them, slightly out of breath. "Sergeant Holloway, Private Bennett," he began, his tone carefully neutral. "This is highly irregular." Before he could continue, a voice called from the crowd, "Let them be." It was an older man with military bearing, possibly a veteran himself. "Some things are more important than rules." Several voices echoed agreement, and a smattering of applause broke out. The scene was drawing more attention by the second, with people stopping to see what was happening. The official looked around uncertainly, then leaned closer to Holloway. "The captain needs to speak with you immediately after your shift," he said quietly, then added with the barest hint of a smile, "which continues for another 45 minutes. According to regulations." Holloway nodded once, understanding. He would face consequences for his actions, but the official wasn't going to make a scene in front of the crowd, or the sick child. Lily was examining the medal in her hands, turning it over to see both sides. "My daddy has medals too," she said, "but he keeps them in a box. He says they remind him of hard times." "Some memories are difficult," Holloway agreed, "but they're important all the same." Catherine placed a hand on her daughter's shoulder. "Lily, I think the guards need to return to their duties now." The girl nodded, clutching the medal tightly. "Thank you for breaking the rules for me," she said with surprising insight. "Daddy says sometimes you have to, for the right reasons." "Your father is a wise man," Holloway replied. With a final nod to Lily and her mother, he resumed his position, once again becoming the impassive figure tourists expected to see. Bennett followed suit, returning to his post with military precision. The crowd, sensing the moment had passed, began to disperse, though many lingered, discussing what they had witnessed. Phones were checked, videos replayed, messages sent. Within minutes, the first social media posts about the incident were already gaining traction online. Catherine guided Lily to a nearby bench where they could sit. The girl was clearly exhausted, but her face glowed with happiness as she showed her mother the medal again. "Do you think Daddy will be surprised?" she asked. "Very surprised," Catherine answered, wiping away a tear, "and very proud of you." Nearby, palace staff conferred in hushed tones, occasionally glancing toward the guards who had now resumed their stoic poses. The incident would need to be reported, explanations given, perhaps disciplinary measures taken, but for now, the two guards stood motionless at their posts, their faces revealing nothing of what had just occurred or what might follow. Captain Richard Fullerton was waiting in his office when Holloway and Bennett finished their shift. His face gave away nothing as the two guards stood at attention before his desk. "I've received multiple reports about an incident during your watch," he began without preamble. "Apparently you both broke character to interact with a civilian. Is this correct?" "Yes, sir," Holloway answered. "I take full responsibility. Private Bennett was following my lead." "That's not accurate, sir," Bennett interrupted. "I made my own decision to break protocol." Fullerton regarded them both silently for a moment. "Do you understand that what you did goes against 2 centuries of tradition? The Queen's Guard is famous worldwide for its discipline and adherence to protocol." "Yes, sir," they responded in unison. "The girl," Fullerton continued, his tone softening slightly. "I'm told she's ill." "And that her father served with you, Holloway?" "Captain Robert Matthews, sir. Afghanistan, 2015. He saved my life during an ambush near Helmand. Took 2 bullets in the process, one of which left him partially paralyzed." The captain nodded slowly. "I reviewed your file after receiving the initial report. Your record has been exemplary until now. 8 years without a single infraction. I am prepared to accept whatever consequences are deemed appropriate. Sir, Holloway said stiffly. As am I, Bennett added. Fullerton stood and walked to the window, looking out at the palace grounds where tourists still gathered. The palace phone lines have been ringing nonstop for the past hour, he said. Videos of the incident are already trending online. Royal Guards break character for dying girl is the headline most are using. He turned back to face them. I've received calls from 3 news outlets and the palace press office. They all want statements. Holloway remained silent, accepting what was to come. Under normal circumstances, this would result in severe disciplinary action, Fullerton continued. However, these are not normal circumstances. He sat back down at his desk and folded his hands. The palace has decided to issue a statement supporting your actions, citing the exceptional circumstances. They feel it demonstrates the humanity behind the uniform, which is not a narrative they wish to discourage. Both guards blinked in surprise. That said, Fullerton added more sternly, this cannot become a precedent. You will both be reassigned to less visible posts for the remainder of the month, and there will be a formal note in your files, though I suspect it's one you'll both be rather proud of in years to come. Thank you, sir, Holloway said, relief evident in his voice. Don't thank me yet, Fullerton replied. I'm assigning you both to additional ceremonial drill practice every morning for the next 2 weeks. While the palace may appreciate the human interest angle, I still need guards who remember their training. Understood? Sir, Bennett said. One more thing, Fullerton added, his expression softening again. Her father, Matthews. How is he doing now? Managing, sir. Works with veterans in Manchester. The family has been through a lot with the daughter's illness. Fullerton nodded thoughtfully. The regiment has a family support fund. I'll see what can be arranged. He stood again, signaling the end of the meeting. Dismissed. Report for duty as usual tomorrow, but expect a different post assignment. As they left the captain's office, Bennett let out a long breath. That went better than I expected. Much better, Holloway agreed. He felt lighter somehow despite the reprimand and reassignment. Outside the palace, tourists were still gathered, some hoping to witness another breaking of tradition, others simply enjoying the historic setting. None of them knew about the small but significant change that had occurred in the guards' usually predictable routine. Holloway's phone vibrated in his pocket as he walked toward the staff exit. It was a text message from Robert Matthews. Catherine just told me what you did. No worries, mate, just thank you. He stared at the screen for a moment, then typed a simple reply. No thanks needed. Some debts can never be repaid, but some gestures must be made regardless. As he put his phone away, Holloway noticed a news van parked outside the palace gates. Word was spreading faster than he'd anticipated. By evening, the story would likely be on television. By tomorrow, it would be in newspapers. The thought made him uncomfortable. He'd never sought attention or recognition. But if it brought some happiness to Lily and her family during their difficult journey, perhaps that wasn't such a bad thing. Bennett fell into step beside him. No regrets? He asked quietly. Holloway thought about Lily's face when he'd knelt before her, the way her eyes had lit up at the mention of her father. He thought about Robert carrying him through gunfire, refusing to leave him behind even as blood soaked through his own uniform. No, he said firmly. No regrets at all. The video of Sergeant Holloway and Private Bennett breaking character to acknowledge little Lily Matthews spread across social media with remarkable speed. By evening, it had been viewed over 2 million times. News websites picked up the story, running headlines that ranged from the sentimental to the sensational. Royal Guard's heartbreaking reason for breaking. 200-year tradition and moment of humanity breaks through royal discipline. Robert Matthews first saw the video when a fellow veteran texted him the link with the message, "Isn't this your daughter?" He watched it 5 times in succession, each viewing bringing fresh tears to his eyes. The sight of his old comrade kneeling before Lily, honoring her courage and acknowledging their shared history, struck him deeply. He called Catherine immediately. "I just saw the video," he said when she answered. "I can't believe Holloway did that." "It was incredible, Rob," Catherine replied, her voice still carrying traces of emotion hours later. "Lily hasn't stopped talking about it. She's showing the medal to everyone at the hotel. How is she feeling?" Catherine's pause told him everything before she even spoke. "Tired, very tired. We're coming home tomorrow instead of staying the extra day. The doctor called and said we should get her back for some tests. Robert closed his eyes, absorbing this news. The good days were becoming fewer, the difficult ones more frequent. "Put her on, will you?" There was a rustling sound. Then Lily's voice came through, weaker than he remembered, but still bright with excitement. "Daddy, did you see? The guards broke their rules for me." "I saw, sweetheart." "That was quite something. Sergeant Holloway said you saved him. Is that true?" Robert swallowed hard. "We saved each other, Lil. That's what soldiers do." "That's what he said, too. And he gave me his special medal. I'm bringing it home to show you." "I can't wait to see it," Robert told her, fighting to keep his voice steady. "You rest now, okay? I'll see you tomorrow." After saying goodbye, Robert sat for a long time looking at his phone. The video paused on the image of Holloway kneeling before his daughter, something about seeing his old comrade in his ceremonial uniform. Breaking years of discipline for Lily brought back memories of their time in Afghanistan. The dust and heat, the constant tension, and the moment when everything had changed. He could still remember the ambush clearly, the crack of gunfire, the shouts of warning, the sight of Holloway down and unable to move. Robert hadn't thought twice about going back for him, just as Holloway hadn't hesitated to break character for Lily. Some bonds transcended ordinary rules. With a sense of resolution, Robert reached for his phone again and made another call. 3 weeks later, Sergeant Holloway and Private Bennett stood at attention outside a small church in Manchester. They wore their full ceremonial uniforms, bearskin hats perfectly positioned, buttons gleaming in the weak autumn sunlight. Unlike their usual duties, however, they weren't guarding a palace or participating in a tourist-watched ceremony. They were honoring a promise. Inside the church, the small white coffin at the front bore a simple arrangement of white lilies and a single-framed photograph. Lily Matthews smiling, taken during happier times before her illness had advanced. Holloway had received the call from Robert 5 days earlier. "She's gone," he had said, his voice hollow with grief. "Peacefully at home. The funeral is Monday." Without hesitation, Holloway had replied, "We'll be there." He had gone directly to Captain Fullerton, requesting special permission for himself and Bennett to attend in full uniform. The captain, having followed the story's development and the public's response to it, had granted permission immediately. Now they stood flanking the church entrance as mourners arrived. Many did double takes at the sight of 2 royal guards standing perfectly still in this unexpected setting. Some recognized them from the viral video and news stories, nudging their companions and whispering behind their hands. Holloway ignored it all, maintaining his focus. This wasn't about publicity or attention. This was about honoring Lily, supporting Robert and Catherine, and standing by fellow soldiers even in their darkest hours. The hearse arrived, followed by a car carrying Robert and Catherine Matthews. As they stepped out, Robert, using a cane to support himself, a permanent reminder of his injuries, immediately spotted the 2 guards. For a moment he froze, clearly overcome. Catherine touched his arm, tears already streaming down her face. With perfect synchronization, Holloway and Bennett snapped to attention and saluted as Robert approached. "You came," Robert said simply, his voice rough with emotion. "Of course." "Sir?" Holloway replied. Robert reached out his hand, and Holloway broke position to shake it firmly. "It means everything," Robert told him. "She was a brave soldier," Holloway said, "just like her father." More mourners were arriving, family members, hospital staff who had cared for Lily, and a surprising number of people who seemed to have no direct connection to the family. The video had touched many hearts, and some had felt compelled to pay their respects to the little girl who had briefly united the internet in a moment of shared compassion. Throughout the service, Holloway and Bennett maintained their posts outside, standing motionless despite the occasional drizzle that began halfway through. When the small coffin was carried out, they saluted again, holding the position until the procession had passed. As the mourners dispersed afterward, many stopped to thank the guards for coming. An elderly woman pressed handkerchiefs into their hands, insisting they would need them. A young father with tears in his eyes simply nodded his appreciation, unable to speak. Robert approached them one last time before leaving for the cemetery. "I know you have to get back to London," he said, "but I wanted to show you something first." He opened a small velvet box. Inside was Holloway's medal, the one he had given to Lily. "Catherine and I wanted you to have this back," he said, holding it out. Holloway shook his head. "It belongs with Lily." "We've buried her with a copy," Robert explained. "The palace sent it when they heard an exact duplicate. But this one," he looked down at the original medal, "this one has your history in it. And now it has Lily's too. I thought perhaps you might carry it again with both memories now." Holloway hesitated, then carefully took the box. "I would be honored." "You're breaking character for her. It gave us one of her last truly happy moments," Catherine said, joining them. The video, the attention it brought, it made her feel special during her final days. Like her struggle mattered to the world. "It mattered," Bennett spoke up, his usual reserve softening. "She mattered." As the Matthews family departed for the private burial, Holloway and Bennett returned to the train station for their journey back to London. They traveled in uniform, drawing curious looks from other passengers who wondered what royal guards were doing so far from their usual posts. Sitting across from each other as the train pulled away, Bennett finally broke the silence. "Do you think the captain will put us back on public duty soon?" Holloway nodded. "Probably. The story's starting to fade from the headlines. Palace visitors have stopped asking about those guards who broke character." "No regrets, then?" Bennett asked, echoing his question from weeks earlier. Holloway's hand went to his pocket where the medal now rested. "None," he said firmly. "Some moments in life demand we break formation." 6 months later, a new memorial bench was installed in St. James's Park, overlooking Buckingham Palace. Unlike most memorial benches with their simple plaques, this one featured a small bronze sculpture of a bearskin hat on one end. The plaque read, "In memory of Lily Matthews, 2016-2024. Bravery comes in many uniforms." The bench quickly became something of a landmark, with visitors often stopping to take photos or leave small tokens, coins, flowers, occasionally even toy soldiers. Palace guides added it to their tours, telling the story of the little girl who had reminded the world that behind every stoic guard was a human heart. Sergeant Holloway visited occasionally, usually in civilian clothes, sitting quietly for a few minutes before continuing on his way. Once a tourist recognized him and asked for a photo, but he politely declined. "I'm just here to pay my respects," he explained. Robert and Catherine visited too on what would have been Lily's 9th birthday. They brought flowers and spent an hour sitting together, watching the palace guards in the distance going through their perfectly choreographed routines. "She would have loved this," Catherine said, gesturing to the bench with its growing collection of mementos. "All these people remembering her." Robert nodded, leaning on his cane as he stood to leave. "I keep thinking about what Holloway said at the funeral, about her being a brave soldier." "She was," Catherine agreed. "The thing is," Robert continued, looking toward the palace where guards stood at their posts, "when I was in the service, we had a saying, the bravest acts often go unnoticed. But Lily's didn't. Because 2 men were willing to break character, her courage was seen by millions." As they walked away, a palace guard in the distance went through the changing ceremony, movements precise, expression unchanged. To tourists, he appeared exactly like all the guards who had come before him, disciplined, unwavering, the perfect symbol of tradition, but beneath the uniform beat a human heart, capable of compassion so powerful it could break through 2 centuries of protocol for one small girl with extraordinary courage. Some stories fade quickly from public memory, but in the guardrooms of Buckingham Palace, new recruits were now told the tale of Lily Matthews as part of their training. Not as a warning against breaking protocol, but as a reminder of why they served in the first place, not just for tradition or ceremony, but for the people those traditions were meant to honor. And on quiet nights when tourists had gone, sentries at the East Post sometimes reported hearing the soft laughter of a child, though most dismissed it as just the wind through the palace gates. All except Sergeant Holloway, who would simply smile and stand a little straighter at his post as if being watched by a pair of bright, brave eyes.